Ken Usato is a regular high schooler, while his classmates Suzu Ni Inukami and Kazuki Ryusen are the president and vice president of their school's student council. After class, Usato realized that someone else had taken his umbrella, which prevented him from leaving in the heavy rain. Even if there was still one on the rack, he refused to take what wasn't his. While waiting for the rain to stop, Inukami appeared. She realized Usato didn't have an umbrella, but she reminded him that they'd have to leave the school soon. Because of this, Usato decided to leave despite the rain. But luckily, Kazuki offered to lend him his spare umbrella. The three decided to walk home together. Afterwards, Kazuki and Inukami stopped walking as they heard the sound of bells ringing. Usato was confused, as he didn't hear anything. However, when he walked closer, a magic circle suddenly appeared beneath them. After getting woken up by Kazuki, Usato saw a king sitting on the throne with knights and a priestess standing by his side. The king introduced himself as Lloyd Volga's Linger, and he explained that he had summoned them as heroes to protect the kingdom of Linger. While Usato and Kazuki are stunned, Inukami is thoroughly excited. The king also stated that, despite successfully driving off the Demon Lord's army's attack, they continued to spread, placing the kingdom in great danger. As a last resort, they had to perform hero summoning, which is a forbidden ritual that calls forth accomplished individuals from another world. Kazuki was outraged that they had been summoned to another world without their consent, and he asked that they be returned immediately. However, the king apologized, stating that they did not have a way to return them. Kazuki declined to accept it. However, when the knights pointed their weapons at them, Usato instantly tried to calm Kazuki down. To everyone's surprise, the king kneeled down and promised to find a way to send them back before asking for their help until then. Inukami then respectfully asked why the king called them heroes despite not knowing anything about them. Wellesley explains that the ritual summons accomplished individuals, and the bells ringing they heard indicated that they were heroes. However, they remembered that Usato didn't really hear the ringing bells, so they realized Usato was brought along by accident. Afterwards, the trio followed Wellesley to get their magical abilities measured using a crystal ball. Inukami started using the crystal ball, which indicated that she has an affinity for thunder magic and that she has ample mana as well. Kazuki used the crystal ball next. It was determined that he has an affinity for light magic. Afterwards, Usato started using the crystal ball, which shone with a soothing green light. However, Wellesley was terrified and took Usato with her to meet the king. The king was surprised by their arrival, but he asked about the heroes' magical abilities right away. While she confirmed their incredible magical abilities, she reported that when Usato used the ball, it turned green. The king instantly pondered the most secure place to send Usato. Suddenly, a woman in a white uniform entered the room. Rose, the rescue team's leader, noticed Usato and asked whether he was a hero. The king quickly explained to her that Usato was not a hero, but rather an ordinary boy pulled into their word. Afterwards, Wellesley told Rose where the heroes were, and she decided to leave and meet them. Usato, on the other hand, asked about the green color's magical properties. Everyone around him had their jaws dropped in shock, while the king immediately asked Wellesley to send Usato away with her magic, but Rose quickly caught up with him. She promised the king that he would turn Usato into a full-fledged healing magic user, and she refused to listen when the king explained Usato's situation again. Rose explained that Usato has the potential to become a healing magic user, so she brought him to train him with the rescue team. Afterwards, she called for her subordinates, who arrived in no time. Rose explained that although they were his subordinates, they weren't healing magic users, and the 2 healing magic users on the team were assigned elsewhere. At the same time, Inukami and Kazuki were worried when they found out that Usato had been taken away, so Wellesley explained that he would train in the rescue team under Rose. Inukami thought it wasn't a problem. The day after being summoned, Usato is visited by Inukami, and Kazuki felt relieved that he was safe, so he apologized for making them worried. After they leave, he begins his training from hell, which is all physical and not magical. Usato's training is easier than he imagines at first, but gets progressively more difficult. Rose proves every bit of the brutal teacher he expected, but his magic begins to manifest after a few days. After nearly 2 weeks, Rose finally tells him why he's training his body and not his magic. He needs to be able to outrun the enemy and rescue injured allies quickly. His training only gets more difficult. Inukami and Kazuki visit again, along with Princess Celia, and notice the fruits of his efforts. The Knight Commander, Siglis, was angered by the way Rose was training Yuzato. He thought she was destroying a young man with a bright future. However, Rose drops the bomb that she's training him to become her right-hand man. Rose explained that she likes how he never gives up and that he's been surviving his training. Afterwards, they happily ate the pie that the princess had brought for them. While eating, Kazuki asked Yuzato if he was undergoing the same intense training every day. Yuzato explained that it was actually lighter than usual, but he also asked how their training was. Kazuki explained that although their magic and sword training were also tough, Siglis and Welsi always considered their health and well-being. Yuzato thought that was how it should be, and Rose was just brutal. Yuzato was confused when Kazuki apologized after hearing it, so Kazuki tried to explain. However, Inukami suddenly interrupted them to check Yuzato's abs, and she also wanted to touch them. The next day, Rose takes Yuzato outside the city to the darkness of Linger, telling him not to come back until he's killed a grand grizzly, the rare and evolved form of a blue grizzly. Rose physically throws Yuzato into the forest. Yuzato realized that the fall might actually be enough to kill him, so he started using his healing magic right away to make sure he could survive. After a crash landing, he immediately encountered a bear, and he immediately ran away in fear. While running, he thought it was nothing compared to Rose and his hellish training, so he decided to fight. However, 2 blue grizzlies appeared behind the grand grizzly, so he had no choice but to run for his life again. He managed to shake them off after diving into the waterfall. Yuzato found a safe place after climbing up one of the huge trees and decided to rest the night. The next day, he begins looking for clues that would help him find the grand grizzly. Then he stumbles upon an injured rabbit monster and uses his magic to heal it, which ends up following him around. It can seemingly understand what he's saying and leads him to the grand grizzly, where the same bears that chased him before make their home. He decided to observe the bears first, so he realized that they were a family. Afterwards, Yuzato took some water from the river. However, the next day, he experienced severe stomach pain because of the water he was drinking. Yuzato did his best to deal with the pain using his healing magic, and he was relieved to see the black rabbit come back. After he was feeling better, the black rabbit led him to a source of drinking water. However, while he was thanking the rabbit, he noticed it seemed to be afraid of something. Yuzato was surprised when he saw the massive white serpent between the trees. Yuzato hadn't read about the monster, so he wanted to avoid it at all costs. When he finally works up the will to kill the grizzly, he finds 2 of the 3 dead, likely from the serpent from a few days prior. He was certain that the serpent was responsible for the bear's death, and they were killed not for food but out of malice. The blue grizzly cub appeared from underneath the rubble, and he was in tears after seeing his dead parents. Yuzato leaves to avenge the cub's family. The rabbit leads him to the serpent, where he is surprised to see the injured blue grizzly cub fighting the snake on its own. Yuzato suddenly came charging, so he managed to get close to the snake's head. He barely dodged the snake's bite, but he used this chance to pierce its eye. And although he was thrown away after getting hit by its tail, he got back up in an instant after healing himself. Yuzato focused on attacking the right side of the monster, where it was blinded, but the monster was actually prepared for it, so Yuzato couldn't dodge its bite. However, he refused to give up. He didn't let go of his knife, and he used it to stab the snake while his hand was stuck in its mouth. The snake was forced to let him go because of this, but its venom started to take effect, so Yuzato was still at a disadvantage. Luckily, Yuzato knew how to deal with it, as he learned how to heal himself from the inside out after suffering stomach pain from the dirty water. After recovering, Yuzato charges towards the snake, which was prepared to attack Yuzato with its tail. But the blue grizzly cub blocked it, and he also held the tail down to give Yuzato an opening. Yuzato managed to climb the snake's head, and his punch was strong enough to crack its skull and knock the monster down. While the blue grizzly cub was holding the snake down, Yuzato continued stabbing the snake's eye until it stopped struggling. The duo celebrated their victory, but the snake actually got up again, and Yuzato was completely helpless as the snake's venom was in his body. However, Rose suddenly came out of nowhere, and she stomped the snake to death. Yusato also learns that the rabbit is her pet and has been watching over him. Yusato has passed her test, and the cub becomes Yusato's new companion. The time for battle with the Demon Lord's army draws very near, and Rose informs Yusato he'll be on the front lines with her healing the wounded. Meanwhile, the demon army had finished preparing their warriors and was ready to advance at any time. The Demon Lord asked Amila to lead the army, and she agreed to do her best. Hyrelek, the demon doctor, mocked Amila when he noticed she was still frightened from her visit with the Demon Lord. Yamila wasn't happy with his behavior, so she ignored him and left. Hyrelek, on the other hand, assured her that his work was progressing well and offered to show her their most recent demon-made monster prototype. It was the same massive serpent Yusato had encountered, and Hyrelek named it Baljanek. At the same time, the blue grizzly cub, whom Yusato has named Blurin, joins in on Yusato's training. His role is to be carried on Yusato's back while he continues his running routine. Afterwards, Yusato decided to give Kazuki and Inukami a visit, and while he was wondering if Blurin would be allowed to enter the castle, someone called to Yusato, although Yusato only noticed him when he fell while running after him. After apologizing, he introduced himself as one of the team's healers, Orga. He explained to Yusato the significance of having a healer on the front lines. However, since it was an extremely dangerous job, Orga was certain that Rose would only pick someone she trusted. Afterwards, Yusato makes his way to the castle to visit Inukami and Kazuki, but Kazuki is on a training excursion in the darkness of Linger. After putting the sleeping Blurin to bed, Yusato saw Rose, and she asked how his training was. Yusato told her that he's getting used to his training. Rose told him that their job was to drag back all the wounded and snatch the wounded that the enemy was about to finish off. She declared that those were their jobs as the rescue team. Yusato agreed with determination, and he finally felt that he was really a member of the rescue team. The next day, Yusato joins Inukami along with Knight Aruku and a mage on her training mission in the forest and brings Blurin along since the cub hates everyone but him, so he can't be left with the rescue team. On the outskirts of the forest, the bandits revealed themselves and asked Yusato's party to surrender their belongings. Yusato thought they weren't scary at all. While Inukami was excited to finally meet some real bandits, the bandits were scared when they noticed Blurin. But their leader noticed that he was still a cub and wanted to be his pet. Yusato was enraged, but Inukami immediately electrocuted the bandit. Yusato was amazed, so she ordered Inukami to electrocute all of them while calling her a human electric eel, so Inukami was annoyed. However, Aruku was dealing with the bandit leader when the battle was interrupted by boar monsters, and Yusato and Inukami got separated from the others. But they were thrown into the river after going through the forest. Yusato woke up to Inukami, trying to carry him away, declaring that she would protect him and repay her debt. Then Inukami got embarrassed when she realized that Yusato was awake, also complaining that he had woken up too fast. Yusato explained that their current location was where Rose had him train. Yusato immediately checked their equipment, and he was disappointed that they didn't have any food. They make camp in a cave for the evening. At the same time, they found some venom monkeys hiding within the cave walls. Yusato explained that, while they were not violent, they were still venomous, and she should not touch them. However, Inukami couldn't resist their cuteness and was bitten while attempting to touch one of them, so Yusato had to heal her right away when she lost consciousness. At the palace, Kazuki learns they went missing and tries to go after them, but is stopped by Rose, who proudly proclaims that if Inukami is with Yusato, they'll be fine. Yusato and Inukami discuss if they want to go home to Japan or not. Yusato wanted to go back, but also wanted to stay in their current world. Meanwhile, Inukami declared that she didn't want to go back, and she urged Yusato to ask why. However, he could already guess that she liked their current world over the previous one. Inukami explained that she always wanted to free herself from all the shackles, and she finally got the freedom she wanted. Yusato thought it was fine to feel this way, as he had always wanted to change his mundane life. The next morning, Yusato and Inukami traveled back through the forest. They were on guard, so they immediately heard some rustling from afar. But it was just Blurin, and he immediately pounced and hugged Yusato. At the same time, Aruku also showed up, but he was worn out after following Blurin's tracks. Back in the kingdom, the king was glad that both Usato and Inukami were safe. He also apologized for putting the two in a difficult situation. Later, Kazuki and Princess Celia arrived. Both were still concerned about their safety, and Celia even mentioned that Kazuki almost rushed out of the castle to look for them. Usato was shocked to learn from Kazuki that Rose trusted him, but he believed she simply understood that the situation was nothing compared to his training. Back in the king's throne room, Rose and Siglis learned that the bandits that attacked the party in the forest were from the grasslands, where creatures such as boars are abandoning their natural habitats, indicating the demon army's approaching return. Rose is tasked by the king to do an investigation and determine their exact position, as well as to lead Linger's army as she has in the past, which she rejects, revealing more about her past. She believed her arrogance had led her troops to their deaths, and she recognized that when someone dies, everything ends. But it was the reason why she created the rescue team, as she wanted to lead a unit that saves lives instead of fighting. Rose pointed out that she wanted a subordinate who would not die. She also stated that healing magic, the ability to overcome human limits, and the mental strength to endure everything were qualities she wanted in a perfect subordinate. The king knew Rose was referring to Usato, so she added that he was her perfect subordinate. Meanwhile, Amila supervised the construction of the bridge that the demon army would use to invade. However, a log struck the bridge unexpectedly, shattering everything they had built. Hyrulek understood it had been thrown from the opposite side of the cliff, and Amila screamed in anger after seeing Rose. Although Rose was just planning to scout things out, she didn't mind delaying the invasion for a few more days. Delivering a letter from Rose to Orga, Usato meets Orga's younger sister Yuru, who is also a healer and who talks about her and Orga's experiences with Rose. They sneaked to watch Orga heal a child, and Usato was amazed after seeing Orga's rich and fluid mana. He thought it was completely different from his. Afterwards, Orga thanked Usato for delivering Rose's letter. At the same time, someone arrived, asking for help for his friends who had been injured in an accident. Orga asked Usato to come with them, and he also asked him to treat one of the patients. Usato was nervous, as he had only healed minor injuries before. Usato praised Orga before fully healing the man's wounded leg. Orga complimented and thanked Usato. However, Usato was unsure that he had done it correctly. But Yuru reminded him that the injured guy was startled when his pain went away, totally following Usato's treatment. After Usato leave, Yuru praised her brother for being cool when he advised Usato. Orga laughed, but he got serious afterwards, and he explained that Rose's letter was a notice for them to prepare for the coming war against the demon army. Orga was concerned because Yuru and Usato had no combat experience, but he believed Rose had prepared Usato for the situation. While trying the fruits he bought for Blurin, a fox beastkin girl approached Usato, talking about a future that only Usato could see or change. Usato was confused, but he suddenly saw countless fallen soldiers before seeing the lifeless Inukami and Kazuki, who had fallen at the hands of the Black Knight. Usato was still confused by what he saw, but he immediately ran and tried to find the fox girl to ask about the vision without success. When Rose returns to the city from her patrol, Usato learns from her that the demon lord is coming. Usato asked her if she knew about a fox beastkin. Rose explained that beastkin were considered valuable prey because of their beauty and unique magical properties. Usato asked whether it included the power to show the future. Rose had heard of beastkins known as oracles of time who possessed similar skills, but she added that they were rare and well protected within beastkin territory. Rose became interested as to why Usato was asking, so he pretends to have read about them in a book, but Rose could see he was hiding something. They then parted ways, since Rose still needed to report to the king. The king apologized to Rose as she had to do something so dangerous, but he was also thankful that she delayed the invasion. Later, the king tells Inukami and Kazuki to prepare for the incoming war. That night, Kazuki visits Usato, admitting that he's terrified of war. Usato understood the tremendous pressure, and he told Kazuki that it was fine to put his own feelings first and not meet everyone's expectations from time to time. Kazuki asked how Usato felt about their current situation. Usato declared that he was going to go to war and save the people fighting against the demon army. Kazuki finds his own resolve after talking, and Inukami overhears the entire conversation after following Kazuki to check on him. The next day, the king informs his army and the citizens about the impending invasion. Despite knowing that the demon army would be stronger than it was 2 years ago, he was certain that they could win again. They have not only heroes and a brave army, but also a rescue team to care for their wounded, who performed admirably during the struggle 2 years ago. The king declared victory would be theirs. Kazuki visits Celia and vows to come back. Celia blushed upon hearing this, but she also asked him to return safely. Blurrin reaffirms that he only likes Yuzato when he refuses to let Yoru pet him, and the rest of the rescue team is ready for war. Rose explains how she and Yuzato will operate on the field, and he receives an official rescue team uniform. Rose tries to tell him that the worst thing one can do on the battlefield is forget the value of their own life. Hearing this, Yuzato declared that he would protect everyone, including himself, and Rose was glad to see his determination. Yuzato remembered the visions he saw, but he didn't care whether it was the future or not, as he was determined not to let Inukami and Kazuki die. As Linger's forces make their way to the battlefield, Rose flashes back to 2 years ago, when she was still a knight. Rose joined the meeting about the first sighting of the demon army inside the kingdom's territory. The king ordered everyone to be vigilant, but he also reminded them to avoid any conflict. Rose was wondering how she could gather more information when a girl started calling out to her, and she only stopped after getting punched in the head. All complained that Rose's punch could have killed her, but she asked about the demon's appearance afterwards. However, she received another punch for eavesdropping on a top-secret meeting. Rose's subordinate welcomed them back, but they noticed that All's face was pale. However, they realized that she had done something wrong when Rose declared that she would train them herself. All denied that it was her fault, but they didn't bite her excuse, and they started beating her up. The next day, the team continues their recon mission and encounters demons hunting monsters in human territory as part of some hidden scheme. However, Nero, the demon army commander, also noticed that they were around. Rose revealed herself and asked Nero to leave peacefully, but the situation changed when he refused to leave. Rose put everything on command, aware that she would need to focus on fighting Nero. Nero used wind armor to defend himself while attacking, but he was shocked that Rose could match his speed. Rose landed a hit on Nero. Although he was tossed away, she felt it wasn't enough, and she also sustained some injuries. Rose was worried about her squad, but she chose to leave everything to them as she chased Nero. She easily avoided his ambushes before tossing many trees in his way. However, he used his wind armor to protect himself. Nero was amazed by Rose's strength, but he remained confident and confined her inside many wind blades. He was overjoyed to see Rose risking serious injury by breaking out of the wind blades, but he eventually discovered Rose was a healer. Nero believed she was a monster when he saw how powerful Rose was, especially on melee, because of her healing magic and incredible physical strength. He introduced himself before asking Rose for her name. After hearing her name, Nero summoned his weapon while declaring that she would die in his hands. However, Rose wasn't intimidated, and she declared that she would beat him down first. As the flashback continues, Rose's team battles the demons while Rose continues her battle with Nero. Nero unleashes a cursed blade and some kind of power that turns the tide of the battle, making the other demons stronger, immune to their own pain, and willing to sacrifice their lives without hesitation. One of Rose's squad members is killed, shocking and discouraging the others, causing the rest to be killed as well in short order. Rose loses her composure and, as a consequence, loses her right eye, which can't be healed because the damage was inflicted with a cursed item. Before Nero strikes the killing blow on Rose, All jumps in front of her and takes it herself. Rose gazed at the injured before noticing the deaths of her other subordinates. She recalls how confident they were when they learned that she would personally guide them on their journey. She knew how much they trusted her to protect them and ensure that no one died while she was in charge. At the same time, Nero declared that he would never forget his and Rose's subordinates' deaths as he tried to finish off Rose. Rose, on the other hand, grabbed his sword and began beating him down, claiming that someone who would sacrifice his own subordinates knew nothing about them. Rose smashed Nero to the ground before throwing him into the air, and when he flew from her blow, she tossed his sword after him, piercing his shoulder and pinning him to a tree. Before she can kill him, a younger Emiller rescues him, and Rose is emotionally unable to give chase. She could only punch the ground in frustration, but she immediately crawled towards All when she heard her voice. Rose tried to heal All, but her wound was too fatal, and the curse was preventing her healing power from working. All had already accepted her death. She said that she and her friends had no regrets and were glad they had fought alongside Rose. She then begged Rose to remain the person they admired. Rose declared that she would not die, but all she could do was scream in rage as All joined the rest of her fallen soldiers. Rose reported everything to the king, including the demon lord's coming resurrection and the likely invasion of their kingdom, and requests to be demoted, mourning her team and blaming herself. While on her way back to her unit's headquarters, Rose ran into Josh's parents. She immediately apologized for his death, but they actually thanked her for bringing back their son, and they told her that he looked satisfied, as they even recalled how happy he was to serve under her. After about a month, Rose recovers enough to decide to create the rescue team. Back in the present, Rose declared that she was glad to find Usato, and she also congratulated Usato on his accomplishments. Rose explained how precious Usato's existence was, as not every healer could get as competent as him just by training. At the Vanguard camp, Usato wakes up early and runs into Inukami, who seems far too excited for a battlefield. Kazuki rescues him from her fangirl moment and takes her to meet with Siglis. Siglis explained that they would launch a magic strike as soon as the enemy appeared, and the heroes were given the task of leading at the front to open a path towards the enemy commander and take her head if they got the chance. The army immediately prepared their spell at the sight of the demon army, and the heroes led this attack. However, it was an illusion, and the true demon army was charging from the left side of their formation. So, in Yukami, Kazuki rushed out to stop them. At the same time, Rose had also started giving out orders to the rescue team to bring back the injured, but she didn't forget to remind them to return alive. She then instructed Orga and Yuru to stay in camp to heal the injured, and she put Eriku in charge of keeping them safe. Another giant white serpent appears on the battlefield, as does the Black Knight, who can't be harmed due to their unique reflection magic. Usato and Rose finally go into battle, separating to cover more ground, and begin healing the injured after Rose gives him one last piece of training. The Black Knight arrived to stop their attack. Kazuki and Inukami felt that she was powerful, but it was not like that of other soldiers, so they charged at her despite Inukami's warnings. Surprisingly, the Black Knight simply stood there and allowed them to pierce her armor with their weapons. But she transformed her armor to push the soldiers back before reflecting on the injuries she was supposed to receive. Kazuki attacked the Black Knight, but Inukami tried to stop him. Inukami explained that the injuries the Black Knight received would be reflected back to the attacker. However, Kazuki's attack grazed the Black Knight's shoulder, so he suffered from the same injury. The Black Knight thought Inukami was smart, as she figured out her ability right away, but she declared that she would be taking their lives. While running on the battlefield, Usato saw visions of his friend's death again, causing him immense pain that couldn't be healed by his magic because of this, so he was an easy target for the demon soldiers. But luckily, the first soldier he saved arrived to save him. Usato immediately asked where the heroes were, so the soldier explained that they would be at the very front of the battle. Usato thanked the soldier before rushing to the front lines, hoping that he would arrive in time. Meanwhile, Yukami and Kazuki charged simultaneously, and Inukami used her magic to obstruct the Black Knight's vision. They managed to land several hits on her, and they thought about whether she was unable to reflect the injuries she sustained from attacks she couldn't see. However, the injuries were still reflected. However, Inukami observed another injury on the Black Knight's back. Because of this, she decided that they give it another try, and Kazuki agreed. Inukami used her magic to boost her speed, while After Effects must have keyframes selected from one layer in order to export them as text. Kazuki blinded the Black Knight with his magic, so Inukami managed to pierce her chest from the back. Because of this, she concluded that the Black Knight couldn't reflect attacks she couldn't sense, and since she was now unable to speak, Inukami signaled for Kazuki to finish her off. However, The Black Knight was actually faking her injury. She pierced Kazuki's stomach with her sword before reflecting the injuries she was supposed to suffer from Inukami's attack back at her. Afterwards, she revealed that she could reflect on the damages she received at will, and it doesn't matter if she didn't sense the attack or if she uttered the word reflect. Then she declared that no one in the world could hurt her. So Inukami could only look at the injured Kazuki with despair before apologizing to Yusato, who was still looking for them throughout the battlefield. The Black Knight declared it was time to end the battle, but Yusato arrives just in time to save her and Kazuki, landing a punch on the Black Knight. However, he thought he was late as he saw Inukami and Kazuki on the ground with a pool of their own blood. But he realized he made it in time after seeing that Kazuki was barely holding on to his life. Inukami regained consciousness. The Black Knight, who is revealed to be a female, is furious at being hit and actually injured. She chases Yusato as he tries to get his friends to safety, while the determined soldiers refuse to let anyone pass. However, Yusato had to dodge the sword coming in their direct direction. Yusato was annoyed as he couldn't focus on healing everyone, but Inukami explained that the Black Knight's armor actually has the ability to reflect attacks back to the attacker. Yusato didn't want to fight, but he didn't have a choice, and he asked Inukami to stay back before charging at the Black Knight. The Black Knight transformed her armor as she attempted to stab Yusato. Yusato, on the other hand, effortlessly blocked her blows, and he noted how shocked she was that none of his attacks were reflected back at him. So he took advantage of this opportunity to close the distance and deliver another strong blow to her face. The Black Knight was annoyed, so she shifted her armor and attacked Yusato again. The reflection magic appears useless against Yusato's healing magic, giving him the upper hand. The Black Knight was enraged, and Yusato was pushed back by her magic. However, Yusato declared that he would finish the battle with his next attack. He was determined to stop the Black Knight from hurting any of his comrades. Yusato's ultimate healing punch collided with the Black Knight's sword. It was a stalemate at first, but Yusato increased the intensity of his magic, melting the Black Knight's sword and allowing him to land the decisive blow, knocking her unconscious. He then tends to the wounded, and the demon army breaks, preventing more injuries. They thanked Yusato, but Yusato stated that it was his job as a part of the rescue squad. However, the knight was more thankful that Yusato defeated the Black Knight, as it caused the demons to lose their will. Meanwhile, the White Serpent is still wreaking havoc, and Inukami and Kazuki take on the serpent and kill it. After Amila learns of the Black Knight's defeat, she orders the demons to retreat. Rose and Yusato head back to camp, and Rose commends Yusato for saving the heroes and defeating the Black Knight. However, he began to cry and declared that he was glad he had met Rose and that he was of help to everyone. Rose recalled that her previous squad said the same thing, but now they were all just a part of her memory while Yusato was still with her, so she praised him for coming back alive. Yusato was glad, but he lost consciousness after running out of mana and stamina. After returning from battle and being publicly praised, Yusato is summoned back to the castle, where he is overwhelmed by grateful citizens on the way there. At the castle, the king demands to speak with the Black Knight, who refuses to reveal information unless she can meet with Yusato. Inukami tags along with him and Siglis. After learning from Siglis that dark magic and healing magic basically cancel each other out, Yusato realizes that none of the damage he inflicted on the Black Knight healed, and she's likely in critical condition. He heals her properly, driving her to tears from his magic's warmth. Later, Rose begins training Yusato in dodging attacks, since healing injuries caused by cursed weapons is impossible, meaning that he needs to practice how to properly avoid being hit. He complains about his harsh training to the Black Knight, whom he has been visiting regularly. Rose meets with the king and, under his orders, offers the Black Knight a choice: rot in a cell or be trained by her as part of the rescue team, which isn't really a choice since Rose takes her by force anyway after sealing her dark magic away. Later that night, Rose informs Yusato that he, Inukami, and Kazuki will soon be tasked by the king with delivering official missives to neighboring territories, asking for aid against the Demon Lord. While in town with Inukami, Yusato spots a little fox girl after seeing her on one of the stalls. Yusato raised her up, but she wasn't surprised at all, and she stated that it was time for him to pay her back as she asked Yusato to save her mother. Yusato and Inukami talk to Amako at Rescue Team HQ. Amako reveals that she left Beastkin territory 2 years ago to find a healer, as humans are the only ones capable of wielding healing magic, and it can only be Yusato since he's a healer and a fighter. Yusato decides to use the diplomatic mission as an excuse to go to Beastkin territory and save Amako's mother. Apparently, Beastkin value their oracles of time, so escorting her back to her people is good diplomatically. Later, Yusato learns the Black Knight's name is Falm, gifting her a diary to write in while she's training, and she spies on his personal training with Rose. She's progressing, although slowly, and she is horrified by the nature of the training. Later, the king thanks Amako for giving Yusato the vision and thereby saving the kingdom, giving Yusato his blessing to help her, and saying that he'll be delivering the king's missive to 4 territories on the way to Beastkin territory. Yusato requests that Aruku be one of his special escorts and Blurun another. Elsewhere, Rose catches up to Felm, who, after learning about Yusato's mission, had run away, intending to tag along with him secretly. Rose gives Yusato some final advice and tells him she believes in him. Everyone sets off on their journeys to see new nations and people. Rose watched as Yusato's carriage left the kingdom. She had brought Felm with her, but she had no idea where they were going. Yusato had no idea what their journey would bring, but for better or for worse, he was certain that he had already integrated himself into this current world. Thank you for watching till the end, and please don't forget to subscribe. See you next time, and peace out.